Well, welcome back everybody, you Chevetters out there. This is a full REMAN engine. Everything's been done to it. Well, I shouldn't say everything. Bearings, rocker arms. I got my lifters here. We got the pistons here. They're numbered 40 over, and these are resized rods. Spend the money. Don't cut yourself short. And we got our full gasket set here. And the only thing I did was I mic'd the crankshaft and we polished all the journals on it, and everything is speccing out to GM sizes yet. So the block here has been it's been hot tanked, and you need to remove all of the plugs on the end, all the oil galleries in and out, clean it. We put in new frost plugs. This engine is bored 40 thousandths of an inch, and I'm going to start assembling this thing here. Alright, so I removed the plastic, and what I did was I went and cleaned up some of the loose casting areas, cleaned up some of the edges here that were really sharp. It's not going to do a whole lot, but just cleaning it up a little bit here. So I'm going to get ready to put the crankshaft in this thing. This is number 84, and my pistons are also stamped 84, 1, 2, 3, and 4 as per the holes that were honed. And here we go, let's put the bearings in it. So we're going to start putting this cover back in using some Loctite 243 on these two bolts, and that'll be for this oil deflector cover on the back by the rear main seal. Alright, so the cover's in, torqued down, and using blue 243 Loctite, so I can take it out again if I have to. So we are now ready for the next step here. I'm going to drop the bearings in for the main bearings on the crank. Alright, so we put the lower shells in on the block for the mains. Alright, we set the crank in, rotated it, and no issues, nice and smooth. It will spin freely. The next step I want to do here is I went and sandblasted all the head bolts, and I checked for elongation. I checked for the threads being stretched on every bolt before we put them in. The block is already tapped clean. Then we oil these, and then we can get ready to torque them down. Alright, so I went and I torqued down these semi-tight, the 1, 2, 3, 4 main caps, and I just did a proper sequence of from the inside to the outside, left, right, cross pattern. I took the two bolts out of the rear main, and I put my screwdriver under here, and I lifted it up to break that. And what everybody needs to know is these grooves need to be completely clean in the side here on each side. They have to be super clean, and the little gap on the bottom here also needs to be clean, top and bottom. I'll turn it over here some more. So those two crevices, they need to be clear, one here and one here. So what you're going to do is you're going to put that cap back on there, get your bolts, make sure that there's oil on them. Get it started. And the mistake that people make, I already lubricated the whole shaft here. I rotated and dumped a bunch of oil on it. I made sure that my seal has got lots of oil all on the inside, all around the perimeter. Hang on, let me switch hands here. Better have enough room here. Get that seal in there. Started. It is a compression fit, so it's ribbed around the outside. You want to make sure that it is seated to the back all the way. And then I'm going to just tighten it down. So I tightened it down. I left a little bit of height here. You can run your finger over it. Should be tighter yet, but so I've opened my tube up, put the washer on the end, cut a little angle on it. I could have cut it off square more. This one already was cut. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your time and fill that cavity. Oh, I got some air coming out of this tube, and that O-ring and the little washer is there to keep the silicone from coming out. So what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze until it comes out way on the bottom. It's a process, and there it is coming out. I'm going to keep pushing it because I want to make sure there's no air in it. Okay, there's one done. This is the part that a lot of people get wrong. So here I am squeezing, and you can just take your time because it's only going to come out so fast. And wait, can you see the bottom there till it comes out? Squeezing. Get a good second grip here. It's filling that whole cavity, so it's going to take some time. There it is, it's coming out. Make sure I left a little gap so when I tighten it down, it'll fill itself. So now that I've done that, I know those cavities are full. It's coming out. Now I'm going to do the other part that people miss, and that's the little water absorbent insert that's in the package of your engine kit. So you get these little wire felts here. You take this. So I dipped it in some water, and I'm going to take this guy and shove it down into that hole. And the reason this is here, it's to help cure the silicone internally. Some more silicone came out the bottom. I'm going to do the other one. Hands. I'm going to take that little guy, push him down in here. Take my time so I don't push all the silicone out. Take some of the silicone on top. Level it all off. And then I'm going to do my final torquing, which is 50 pounds. And there's 50 there. And then I'm going to finalize the other ones here. Wipe off all that silicone, top and bottom off the edges, and on to the next process. Alright, so what I did was I lubricated all the bolts, made sure that I got oil underneath the cap head here, so there's no washer or anything. And the reason for that is when you're doing the torque test that you can get a proper setting with no friction from metal to metal. So once I got that down, I went back once it was torqued, and I gave it one more shot on each side here, just to make sure that everything's coming out and there's no air in there, and all is well. Alright, so I'm very happy with that. I torque sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and just keep going around doing a little bit at a time so it's all even. So the seal's good, and my rotating assembly at all nice and smooth. I made sure that the seal was very lubricated, and I might even change out this brass gear. I have a new one. So this part is all done, ready to go. Our rear seal's in, and it is a fit. It's not a hammer in, and like I showed you, all the silicone coming out of the pockets. And usually those kits have older silicone, so give it many days to cure. Sometimes I got weeks before I even start something like this up. So what I want to do is I want to get the run out on this crank, and I'll show you. So the run out is the end play in the crankshaft. Hey Charlie, hey, you know cat hair is in this engine here. Hey you. It's a lover. So the run out, where we got it here. Crankshaft end play. Charlie, get off the papers. Crankshaft end play is 394 to 795. So right around 4 thou to 8 thou of an inch is your crankshaft end play. So I got my dial indicator set up here on the end of the crank. We zeroed it in, and so what I'm going to do is between the journals move it position here. I'm going to go all the way back. Hey, 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 get out of there. Gee, that's a screwdriver you're chewing on. Okay. So I'm 2 thou that way and 3 thou that way. So we're 5 thou. So we gotta, Charlie, this guy's not helping me at all. He's just, okay. So to do that test, you press on here, watch your dial, get off the engine, and you go from this side and press it back and watch the dial move. Okay. We don't need cat hairs in this engine. It's supposed to be a clean shop to do this kind of work. The star here, Charlie the cat. Okay, so we got rid of the cat. And again, so dialing it in to 0 on one direction, and then going from the other side, see how much end play. I got about 5 thou, which is really good. So this was probably an automatic. All right, here we got a new gear. Got a nice shiny new gear for the distributor. I oiled up the shaft already. Fit it on there. Get a socket over top or a pipe, and we're just gonna tap that into place. Okay, so I'm gonna let that bottom end sit there, and I covered it up with plastic, and I got Charlie sitting on top of the leathers here. He's guarding the engine on the stand, and I took apart the oil pump that came off another engine. This one here, I knew it looked like it was really new condition, very little bit of cleaning, and what you're going to look for is in your gasket kit, find this gasket. You will need that gasket, and there's the new, get a new pickup tube that goes into there in the pump. You want to replace that because internally I saw there's like scrapes and debris in there, and it could suck air possibly. So looking at the bottom of the pump, the surface is really nice. You want to check the walls. The walls don't have any gouges. This one here is in really nice shape. The top plate will get lapped, but you want to take an X-Acto knife and scrape off that gasket, the old one, and you'll look for any kind of wear surface lines in here. So yeah, with the oil pump, you're going to want to check the surfaces of the gears, that there's no heavy scarring, no gouges, nothing's gone through it. This one here, like I said, the bottom is nice, the top is nice. You got to put them back in order the way they came out. You can see a little bit of surface wear on the gears, that's normal. And the top, and I measured the shaft to make sure that there was no wear groove. And I checked the internal part of the, where the stem of that gear goes. A lot of these have porosity in there. But this pump here is going to need a little bit of cleanup. Oh, cats are fighting. A little bit of cleanup, and it's going to go back together. Alright, so we're going to get ready to put the pistons back in, and we're going to start with number 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, we'll go 1, 4, and then I'll come back to the other two, turn the crank, because these are up. And I'm going to swab it with some heavier lubrication so it stays on the cylinder walls. And I'm going to make sure that my rings are all orientated in place. Got my new shells in here for the rod, and make sure that the oil ring is all seated properly. These are 40 thousandths over pistons, and this is number block 84, and it's piston number 1. These are all machined matched. So I got my piston in with the notch facing to the front of the engine. This block was decked. We put in all new frost plugs, and hot tanking, like I said, was a must. And all the oil gallery ports were removed. Tap all the block holes, tap all of the head bolt holes, blow them out, make sure they're all clean to get a proper torque setting, plus majorly lubricating your head bolts prior to installing. So I got my ring compressor on the piston, making sure it's still located number 1. And now I'm going to tap the piston into place. So I use a piece of nylon shaft, put on top of the piston, and just get it started. There you go, it cleared the ring compressor. Now, actually I need the nylon piece so I can drive that down to the crankshaft to put the cap on it. So I've tapped my piston down with my nylon here to give it a nice support to the bottom of the journal on the crank, and I'm going to rotate the block to put the rod cap on. We got the rod down to the crank, and of course Charlie is here again, just waiting to pounce on this motor because that was his little sitting area for the cradle when it was covered with plastic. So we're going to put the cap on, make sure that you match the numbers. This is a number 5 on this side. Has to match with the 5 on this side here. Make sure you put the bearing shell in before you put the cap on. I'll come back to that. Okay, so I put the cap on with the bearing shell. Make sure that everything is super clean, covered up when you're not working on it. So cap is on, put my bolts, just put them down by hand, and since the other journal here is in the up position and the other 2 are down, I'm going to rotate and do number 4 now. Okay, so number 4, because the crank is up. Okay, cleared the ring. There it's sitting. Okay, so number 4 is in, cap is on. Rotated the crank 180 degrees, so I can do my number 3, 2 and 3. Alright, engine's rotated. Bearing shell is in there. Get the matching cap. So these rods were resized, but there is a hole there. You can see the blue coming through, and that allows oil to get thrown up to the wrist pin, up in the piston area, or up onto the walls anyhow of the cylinder. Again, make sure this is number 7 on the side, and where are you? 7 on that side. They match up. Make sure 7 and 7. Bring them together. The rod just moved down a little bit, so I just tapped it up with a nylon plug. Make sure that everything is facing to the front. Arrows at the front. And it should be 1, 2, 3, 4. All of your markings here to the back of the engine, back of the engine, back of the engine, back of the engine, and on the piston side, everything should be facing the front, front to the front, to the front, to the front. There you go. Bottom end is almost done here. Alright, so now we're down to torquing up the rod caps, and they are a 40-pound torque spec, and you will need a 12-point 13mm, not a 6-point. So I had an angle drive, tighten them up a little bit, So I'm going to give each one a you want to do these in even increments. You don't want to just crank it down to one size. Get it snug, and then you're going to go back and do another final. Go back to number 1. There's 40. Three increments would be good to get up to 40. Alright, it's time for the oil pump pickup tube to be installed onto the oil pump that was inspected. So they gave you this grommet in the kit here, and I'm going to stick it over top of this and give it a little bit of a lubrication around the outside and fit it together. So I pre-fit the rubber on here, gave it a little bit of lubrication, ready to torque down the oil pump. And the oil pump uses the bolts that have the little bit of a, get some light here, can't see it, there you go, it's got that ridge on the head, and they're about 1.25 inches long, but it's the head that gives it away. Those are the oil pump bolts. So I've torqued these to 20 pounds, a little bit of Loctite 243 on them. Now that your tube is in there, we're going to locate, get this guy all stationary, and get the clamp in here to mount this joint. So here's a trick. You need to leave these 3 bolts loose. And what I did to get this last part together was I had to get a screwdriver in here, and I had to push the tube over so that rubber grommet would get in there. And when I had that in place, then I could fit in my fork and put the 10mm bolt in here. And I put a little Loctite on that, 243. And I'm going to torque it to the 8.5 pounds. Okay, so the pump is torqued down. The tube is set and torqued. Bolts are 8.5 pounds. Make sure you do a cross pattern and just keep checking it. Because that's such a tight tolerance, you want to get a screwdriver and go in there. Where are we? And make sure that the pump turns freely, that the case is in binding. Because if you take that gasket out, those gears will be touching the case, and you won't be able to turn this shaft possibly. So it does need that gasket. You cannot get away without the gasket. So everything's turning freely. The distributor drives this oil pump off the brass gear here. Okay, so I torqued the 3 bolts down to 20 pounds. And make sure you don't get these bolts mixed up with anything else. Those 3 are different than the 2 pump bolts here. And you got your 1 tube mounting bolt here. And I did spend money, and I got this all hot tanked, that these parts are all super clean. This is the heart of the system, obviously, your oil lubrication. If this fails, your engine's going to fail. So you want to make sure your pump is good, it's all working in order, and that these mating surfaces are clean here. Alright, next step. Okay, so we're getting ready for the timing cover seal and the camshaft. If you have a kit, the camshaft and the timing gear, they are the same seal, same thickness, might be a different color, but there'll be 2 in a kit, so they interchange. So we're going to hammer this guy in. I got a jig tool to put that in. So I made something here that was for the back of it, so I'm going to put that on top. And I got this socket that centerizes, and I'm going to give that a whack and just drive it in there nice and square and come right back to it. Okay, so I drove it in flush. Run your hand around it. You can feel as level, And what I had here was I had something that made clearance so I don't damage the seal itself. And the tin is sitting on the metal base here. Do not support the bracket, just set it right onto the, so it's sitting on this shoulder here. So I got a sandblaster and I got a basket, my cabinet. I can put the bolts in there, and I had to take an X-Acto knife and after first blast initial to clean out all the grit. Hello, Charlie. Charlie, what's up? Hey, bud. He loves the camera. So yeah, to take all the silicone off of these and take all of the rubbers off the heads for the valve covers. You want to get this stuff all super clean. Get every bit of silicone and rubber off of them. Pick them, go through them. So getting back to the engine now, what I like to do is I've sandblasted all my bolts and made sure that I have everyone located. The holes are all good. So yeah, this takes time, but cleaning is the #1 thing you want. Dirt in this engine is going to destroy it quickly. So I made sure all my bolts are all going to fit all around the block. And then you have, if you got an automatic, you got this guy here that holds your transmission line. And then the nut would go on top of that again. So yeah, I'm ready to put the oil pan on. Alright, so I got my front timing cover on. I torqued these to 7 pounds. Made sure the top here is level on both sides. And if you look at the seal, that everything looks centered. Now we're going to put the oil pan gasket on. So I got my oil pan all sandblasted, cleaned up. And one thing I wanted to show you was I actually put a second drain plug. I did this about 5 years ago in another car. In the front here where your oil pump sits, and this oil in here gets trapped. It cannot work its way back into the bottom of the pan that easily. And so I took a nut off an existing one of these, and I took it and ground it off, cleaned it up, and I put it on here on the outside, drilled a hole, welded it in, and the existing plug I shortened it so it doesn't touch the oil pump. So to verify your test weld, I use some paint thinner. I filled up this bottom piece, turned the pan upside down. I'll turn it over here. So here's the oil pan. So I filled some paint thinner in here, which has got high viscosity, so I could see if there's any leaks coming out. And so everything was good. So I'm going to get this guy installed now. So for sealant, I just put a thin strip and a little bit around the holes. Not a lot. This might even be a little excess in some places. So you want a little bit on both sides. And it'll be torqued 5.5 pounds on the oil pan. Alright, oil pan is on. Of course, the cat has to jump on top of his old sleeping quarters before the oil pan is on. Charlie, is it good? Everything's torqued down properly? And not too excessive silicone squishing out anywhere. Got everything in order? Yes, sir. I'm going to throw an oil filter on here. Cover that up so the short block is done. All we got left is just the timing gear. We're going to clean up the sealing service. It's a new one. Well, here we are. Short block. REMAN here. 3 days later, finally coming back to finish off this video here. So we got the filter on here just to keep it all cleaned up. Frost plugs are all in on this side. We all got the new parts all in the front here, and this is the later generation tab that's longer. The first generations had a short one that didn't have this extra degree markings on it. They were about here, and these are the longer ones. Of course, here comes Charlie again to inspect. Charlie? Yeah, he's talking to me. So what's left here to do, of course, he's on the forklift. Charlie? Charlie? Okay, he's got something going on there. So what I got left to do is put the oil plugs in. We got the block heater to put in on that side. And our oil gallery plug on the back. Under there. Where are you? There it is. I'll close that one up as well. So there you have it. Charlie, what do you think? It's all done? Yeah. So to finish it all off here, give you a little look at the 40 over Pistons and the nice cross hatch and the cylinders. Maybe you can see it better from this way here. Yeah, they're all machined.